Hello and welcome to Game Reviews by James. It's 2015, it's a new year, and with every new year comes new hopes, dreams, ideas, possibilities, and film releases. This year, Jurassic Park, which has laid dormant for almost 15 years now, gets a new entry into the series with Jurassic World. Now, I think the first Jurassic Park film is a masterpiece, but the two sequels that followed it, they're just mediocre in my book. There's a ton of video game content related to this series to take a look at, so that's what I'm going to do today. Originally, someone asked me to make a top 10 Jurassic Park games list, and I thought, okay, but when I sat down and started playing the games, I thought to myself, is there really actually 10 good Jurassic Park games? To be honest, there isn't, so I think I'll just take a look at some of the Jurassic Park games I knew from my childhood. So sit back and we'll get started. The first game I'm taking a look at is Jurassic Park for the NES. Arguably, this game is one of the better title screens I've seen on the NES. You get a good pixelization of the Jurassic Park logo, but after you hit the A button, you find yourself face to face with a T-Rex. After it stares you down, it roars at you, revealing the title screen. That's pretty creative, I must say. Also, look at the drool dripping from the T-Rex's teeth. Now that is a nice touch. When you start the game up, you are treated to a nice little objective story sequence with some good graphics that simulate 3D objects. Now to the gameplay. It's an overhead view like The Legend of Zelda. You control who I believe is Dr. Grant, but it could be anybody. It just looks like a guy in a cowboy hat. Your goal is to collect dinosaur eggs to take them to the lab to be examined, but in your way is a number of vicious dinosaurs. Luckily, you've got weapons to take them down with, but be careful with your ammo. You only have a limited amount, and this game is rather stingy about giving you some more. Thankfully though, for every dinosaur you kill, you get ammo for it, so just be careful and try not to miss hitting the dinosaurs, and you'll find that you never run out of it. The look of this game is kinda drab. It's sort of dark and most of the colors feel pretty muted. In terms of the overall quality of the sprites though, I think they're pretty good. It was 1993 before this game came out, and by that point, developers really knew how to take advantage of the NES's capabilities. Another thing I like about this game is the catchy background music. It's full of energy and enhances the game quite a bit. I like to hop to the beat with Dr. Grant. In fact, I think it's better to just jump around the stage. It's probably faster than actually walking. That being said though, I don't really know what the heck I need to do or where I need to go. This is one of those games where you need a guide to beat it. But even though I don't know what to do or where to go, I've enjoyed this game so far. Even when I got a game over, a smile spread across my cheeks because just look at this continue screen. It's kinda like something out of Abbott and Costello. But in truth, it does seem a bit out of place in a Jurassic Park game. It could just be the cool title screen or the music, but I can't really think of anything to criticize this game about. It's not a gem on the NES by any means, but it's still pretty enjoyable, and it's definitely getting me excited to play more Jurassic Park games. It's just a shame that the film came out in '93, well after the NES's prime. But if you come across this game, it's a pretty fair addition to your collection. For almost every big blockbuster movie released in the early 90s, there was a Game Boy game for it. So now let's take a look at Jurassic Park for Nintendo's Gray handheld. If you played Jurassic Park for NES, this game may seem familiar. Too familiar. For crying out loud, it's the same game. It's got the same title screen, the same graphics, and even the same music. And yes, you can jump to the beat of the song in this version of the game too. Since it is on the Game Boy, it's taken some hits here and there, but it's really the same game. It's just not as pretty to look at. Since I've got more Jurassic Park games to check out, I don't think I'll really say much about this game. It's a fairly decent port of the NES title, and since the Game Boy was in its prominence in 1993, whereas the NES was not, it may be a cheaper alternative to owning the NES version. Although I'm certain the games are different in some aspects. They share enough similarities to not make it particularly necessary to own both of them. Next, let's try Jurassic Park for Sega Genesis. When the system powers up, a T-Rex says Sega, which is actually pretty awesome. This title screen is actually pretty cool too. The gates to the Jurassic Park slam open, and you get a cliched thunderclap in the background. When you start up the game, you get the option to either play as Dr. Grant or a raptor. I think I'll try Dr. Grant first, because it's always better to be the good guy, right? Well, the answer I found out pretty quickly is no. For one, Grant controls kinda stiffly. He's very awkward to try jumping across gaps with, for instance. Sometimes he's supposed to grab onto ledges and pull himself onto a platform, but most of the time he'll just hit the side of the ledge and fall down. You can attack dinosaurs, but I don't really think that you can kill them. They just get stunned, even if I throw a grenade at one of them. It is rather comical to see Grant being thrown around like a rag doll by this Triceratops though. Overall, he's just not that fun to play as. You'd figure a guy with this many different weapons and items would be fun to play as, but it's just rather boring overall. To me, the look of this game is very nice. Though the graphics are pre-rendered, they still look pretty good in the grand scope of things. The backgrounds are detailed and really give you the feel that they were directly inspired from the film. I guess what I mean to say is that the look of this game really feels authentic, like the game developers put a lot of effort into creating it. Unlike some other film license games, where you'd swear the designers glanced at a film's poster and made a full-fledged game based off of it. This intro sequence for Dr. Grant's storyline is pretty intense too, even though it's on a Sega Genesis. It perfectly mimes the suspense from the same scene in the film. If I was a kid back in 1993 when this came out, it would probably scare me. The flashing light is also a nice touch, unless you're prone to seizures, of course. If I do have one gripe with the look of the game, it's that it's just too dark. When I was playing this game, I had a hard time making out where I was at points. Now I've cleaned up the footage a bit in my editing software by toying with the contrast, but it still looks a bit too dark. Okay, I've played as Grant, now how's about we try out that raptor? Apparently, in the raptor's storyline, you're supposed to hunt down and kill Dr. Grant. Huh. So you have two opposite storylines in one game. Interesting. Well, the raptor controls just as stiffly as Grant, but he's a lot more fun to use. He can run really fast and jump super high. The raptor's sections of the game seem to be a lot easier to traverse as an overall result, but there are shortcomings of playing as it. Don't get me wrong. Attacking with the raptor is really awkward. He does have this really limp arm type of attack, but it never really comes in handy. Usually if you hit an enemy while airborne, the raptor does a sort of drop kick that'll take him down, and some enemies can be taken down as simply as walking over them. It's strange and confusing, but if I had to say which character had the better sections of the game, I'd definitely give the edge to the raptor. While lots of people say that the Genesis game is the definitive Jurassic Park game, I don't think I can say that. It's a fun, decent title, but it's not great by any stretch of the imagination. That being said, if you like Jurassic Park in any way, shape, or form, you'll definitely get some kind of enjoyment out of this. Now let's play Jurassic Park for the Super Nintendo. I remember this game vividly from my childhood. We were on vacation one year and we visited my grandma's house. She had a Super Nintendo console and a cardboard box with maybe 15 to 20 games inside of it. One of them was Jurassic Park. But it was pretty low on the pecking order as she had several other games I liked a lot more, like Super Mario World, Zelda: A Link to the Past, Batman Returns, and of course my favorite video game of all time, Donkey Kong Country. So, now that I'm older and wiser, I think it's a good point in time to revisit this game and see if it has anything to offer that maybe didn't stick with me back when I first played it. So here we go. The title screen is nice and all, but I think the NES and Game Boy versions did it better. When you start up the game, you might immediately notice that this game is pretty similar to those two versions, in terms of the way it looks, but unlike those two games, which are almost identical to one another, this game differs in several ways. For one, there are no more eggs to collect, and now you are equipped with a gun that sprays out electric voltage. Plus, since it's on the Super Nintendo, it's obviously been given a huge facelift in terms of its graphical fidelity. Unlike the Sega Genesis version of the Jurassic Park, it's very bright and colorful, and it's an overhead view, so in a sense, they are as different as could possibly be. The control is pretty much the same as the NES version, but I can't help but feel that they overcomplicated the control scheme. In the NES game, you needed 2 buttons, that's it, and you could do everything. In the Super Nintendo version, they make you use 6 buttons. The control just as average. Like here, I clearly jumped over the river, but I drowned anyway. Like I said, just average. A welcome addition to this game is the fact that ammo is much more plentiful, and even if you run out of ammo, your electric voltage gun never runs out, so you're never left helpless like in the NES and Game Boy versions. Sadly though, the music is nowhere near as good as the NES game. You can't whistle it, hum it, or anything of the sort. It's just music for the sake of having music. It doesn't enhance the game experience or take anything away from it either. Thankfully, if you don't like the music, you can toggle it off in the options menu. The new feature in this game that isn't in any other home console version of Jurassic Park is the first-person levels. Like most first-person attempts at the time, it's extremely outdated and just not all that nice to look at nowadays. In fact, I can't even imagine this appealed to anyone in 1993 when this game came out. But I can't say that definitively. I wasn't even alive back then. As I stated a moment ago, I'm not a huge fan of the look of these sections, but they are refreshing from the rest of the game. I like how realistic it tries to look when you go up to the computer, and how you have to physically move Dr. Grant's hand like a mouse cursor just to hit the exit button. In some ways, it's fun to experience things like this in the modern age. It's sort of like being in a time machine that takes you back 22 years, just to show you what the standards of being high-tech were at the time. If I can give this game some sort of kudos, I think it's worth mentioning that it's technically sound. The game isn't mediocre because of poor control or design, but the objectives of the game just aren't that interesting, and it doesn't offer anything new and unique. It pains me to say this, but I think the NES and Game Boy versions of Jurassic Park are better games overall. They pushed the limit of their respective hardware, and at least had good music. All you can really say about Jurassic Park for Super Nintendo is that it tried but failed to be high-tech. For these reasons, I can't really recommend to anyone this version of Jurassic Park. Okay, now let's take a trip to the arcade. Not literally, figuratively I mean. This time we'll be looking at Jurassic Park, the arcade game, released in 1994. I remember a laundromat near our old house had this machine, and me and my little brother always wanted to play it, but it was always out of order, so we never got a chance to. But now, due to technological advances, I could play it from the comfort of my computer chair. The machine had 2 joysticks that the player, or players, could use to aim the crosshairs and shoot dinosaurs. The cabinet resembled the back half of a Jeep, and would tilt side to side to simulate actually driving around. Now that's pretty cool. So let's start this bad boy up. You enter the Jurassic Park, and after a bit of taking in the scenery, a giant T-Rex starts chasing after you. Once you've outrun him into a cave, you end up in a giant field where you shoot down tons of dinosaurs. The goal is pretty simple. Shoot anything and everything coming at you, so it can't attack. If you do this, you have nothing to fear, and the game shouldn't put up much of a challenge at all. The game is filled with really cool 3D scenery, which doesn't necessarily hold up all that well nowadays, but in truth it still is pretty appealing to the eye. The game seems to fail at understanding how physics work though. Here I slammed into a Triceratops and threw it back 20 feet, when in reality it would probably crush my truck like a pancake. Progression in this game occurs rather quickly. There are 4 different levels, and each of them only takes about 3 to 5 minutes to pass. Most of the enemies are pushovers, while others like these guys like to squirt purple acid in your face, making it hard to aim your gun. One problem I have with this game is that it's hard to tell when you actually hit an enemy because usually there are so many of them coming at you at a time, and furthermore, there is no points tracker anywhere, which might go a little ways when being able to decipher if you're actually hitting something or nothing. Since I'm not really playing this game in the arcade or on actual hardware, I have no place to critique the controls, but in the medium I played the game in, I found that the controls were pretty good. At a certain point in the game, I had an army of pterodactyls raining down on me, and I couldn't even see where I was going or what I was doing. After you've gone underground and killed probably another 500 or 600 dinosaurs, you move on to the next level. This time you're killing long-necked dinosaurs. So that's how Littlefoot's mother died. And also trying to keep these spiky dinosaurs from popping your tires. There's this one really creative part where you drive up a sauropod's tail, over its back, and off its neck like a ramp. That's pretty sweet too, I suppose. At one point, there are even dolphins you can shoot at. Let's just hope one of them isn't Echo the dolphin. At the end of the stage, you fight a T-Rex. I swear, the thing broke my windshield like 100 times before I finally offed it. After you've gotten rid of it, you're on to the level 3. This level takes you underground, where tons of little dinosaurs scratch the hell out of you, but they're not too hard to get rid of. Then I guess you drive into the center of a volcano, because you're on a rickety bridge with molten hot magma spurting at you. Believe it or not, there are dinosaurs in here too. How did they get in here without burning into a pile of ash? Don't ask me. Once you're out of the volcano, you get chased by a boulder, Indiana Jones style, and then you fall into a power plant. You get absolutely ambushed by dinosaurs of all types in here. After what seems like a marathon of gunfiring and the slaughter of another 200 or so dinosaurs, you reach the game's finale, a battle with a T-Rex. 30 seconds into the fight, a second T-Rex appears. 2 T-Rexes, damn. Once you've killed them both, the game ends. And that's pretty much it. So there you have it, Jurassic Park Arcade. It's pretty fun in my book, and I only imagine the experience would be 100 times better if I played it in an actual arcade. I probably pumped the equivalent of maybe $8 in quarters to beat this game, which took approximately 17 minutes to complete, so you can draw your own conclusion as to how difficult the game is. It's kinda hard to tell what's going on at times, but of the games I've looked at today, this one was probably my favorite, so I guess the best was saved for last. For how long this review took, it's hard to believe that I barely scratched the surface on Jurassic Park in terms of how many video games there are based on it, but maybe I'll take a look at some more another time. Thanks for watching this episode of Game Reviews by James. Here's to an awesome 2015. Have an awesome day.
Do 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 do.